The content presented in this podcast is based on real events and may contain graphic descriptions of violence, sensitive topics, and explicit language that may be triggering, offensive, or sensitive subjects to some listeners and viewers. Discretion is advised. The purpose of this podcast is to explore and discuss true crime cases for entertainment and educational purposes only. This podcast is not intended to glorify or sensationalize crime, but rather aims to analyze and understand the complexities of human behavior and the criminal justice system. We encourage listeners to approach this content with empathy, critical thinking, and respect for the victims and their families.
Tonight, we are turning the chilling pages of Women Who Murder, an international collection of deadly true crime tales by Mitzi Szereto. Join us as we explore the dark and intriguing stories of women who have committed unthinkable acts across the globe. From calculated schemes to impulsive acts of violence, these tales offer you a unique perspective on the complex motivations behind female-perpetrated homicides. Is it nature versus nurture? A survival of the fittest for these women? Or is it just more sinister than we thought? Let's find out. It's time to start the show. Let's hit it. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. Tonight I have a very special guest, Mitzi Szereto, with her new book, Women Who Murder, an international collection of deadly true crime tales. Mitzi is an American-British author and a short story writer, and her latest book's the best in new true crime stories series, numbering 7 volumes, and a contribution from the anthology Getting Even, Revenge Stories received from the Crime Writers Association short story dagger, highly commended. Mitzi edited the first erotic fiction anthology to include a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature. She's also appeared on TV and radio and has been at many literature festivals around the world. Welcome to the show, Mitzi.
Thank you, and cheers.
Yes, cheers. We got to have our wine when we're doing true crime, right?
Yeah, well, yes, I thought of this at the last minute. I thought, hang on, this has got the Merlot. We have to get some.
I know, we got to coordinate, right? We're ladies. So, Mitzi, you have this wonderful. Now, is this kind of the first book that you solely focused on women when you've done all these true crime books and, you have kind of volumes going on? So, is this kind of the first one focused on women?
Yeah, I mean, it's my 8th true crime book, but I mean, obviously, there's been female killers in some of the other books, but this is definitely, it's all for the ladies.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the thing. We always look at the contrast. We always think of serial killers as being men. And it's very violent, aggressive, usually. Just more cunning and sly about it, or like we're not as brutal, although there are cases of serial killer that are women that are kind of brutal in their attacks, like Eileen Warros. And there's actually one we're going to talk about tonight here, which we can actually go right into it. Joanna Dennehy. Um, I looked her up because I was so unfamiliar, but this didn't happen that long ago. Was about, I think in 2016, I believe it was.
Yeah,
Um,
about 10 years ago. Yeah.
yeah, but like looking through her story, I was kind of blown back of how masculine the way she approached on killing. Can you give us a little insight because it's over across the pond over in London, and I'm not from there. Like I said, we don't really hear about crime from there, it's always vice versa. They hear about our garbage, but we don't get the bad stuff coming from the UK. So, can you guys give us a little backstory on her?
Yeah, well, actually, so it wasn't London specific. It was southeast. It was Peterborough, around that area, which is sort of northeast, but northeast of London, rather, not northeast England. And she's definitely an anomaly for female killers because she's very much she's got that serial killer vibe going on, that mentality, that pleasure that's derived from killing. I mean, she essentially killed because she just enjoyed it.
Mm.
She was a serial stabber, and she just liked to do it. I mean, there was like no justification for anything. There's many stories in the book that you could kind of understand how someone got to that point, but in her case, there is no justification. This was just fun for her, entertainment.
Yeah, and I read an article, they interviewed her mother, and there was a couple quotes that I wanna read, because I was kinda blown back as being a mother myself, and, it's Mother's Day weekend here. She stabbed 3 men. She said that she just did it for kicks. I mean,
Yeah.
she's almost like a female Joker. She's very chaos and anarchy, just not there's no she has no filter, no moral guidance, nothing. I mean, she's just pure evil and going through with what she was saying. But yeah, her mother, they interviewed her and they said that, she's like, I don't understand. She was a very sensitive child. She came from a loving home. She on the sidewalk. She would be so upset because she was worried that the worm was gonna die. So I'm trying her mother doesn't even home when she was 16, and her mother hasn't really seen her since, and when her mom found out, her mom was like, "That's not my daughter anymore. She needs to stay behind bars. I don't know her anymore." And she just washed her hands of her and just and I was like, "Wow." Normally you don't see that, but, is there a little bit more insight? Because it was just an article. Did you see any, like, news, or interviews or something with her mother that, you were kind of shocked of hearing what came out of her mouth about her own daughter?
Um, you know, you have to say that's a pretty extreme case, but I could understand a parent who is just basically going to divorce themselves of their child. I think there is no coming back from it, and it's tragic. I mean, God,
Yeah.
I feel bad that somebody's actually this woman's mother, and you have to live with that for the rest of your life. But Joanna was, she had substance abuse problems, which you know you can't really necessarily say that's what caused all this because there's plenty of people with substance abuse problems and they don't go out serial stabbing for kicks.
Mhm.
Um, but she pretty much was on her own from her teens. She got pregnant at an early age. She actually had, I believe, a couple of kids, and she just wasn't particularly bothered about being a mother. It just, I guess it just was something that happened to her, and she wasn't really that interested. But she was, she enjoyed her drugs and all of that, and drink, and hung around with people that likewise shared those interests. And some of those people ended up becoming her victims. Um, in this specific case, I mean, the 3 people that she actually murdered, she knew, but then there were also 2 people she attempted to murder and she did want to kill them because it was fun. Those were random people, so that's rather interesting that she started with people that she was involved with, one of whom she had a sexual relationship with.
Wow. Yeah, it's like what triggered her to just start going on a killing spree? It's like, was it the drugs? Because I do know that there are people, depending on what kind of drugs. I mean, there's paranoia, there's hallucinations. It's like, but it's almost like she kind of accepted her own addicted psyche as her own personality now. And she's like, this is just who I am now. Deal with it. And she's just killing
Yeah.
everybody. And oh my gosh, being a parent, I would have to divorce myself from that because it reflects on you as a parent. Because no matter what, if there's a child or a young adult that does something like this, they always look at what happened. How did the parents abuse this child? What's going on? So they always look at the parents. Where did they screw up? And sometimes they don't. It's just
Yeah.
she must have just started hanging out with the wrong crowd and just completely wanted to throw her life away. And that's exactly what she did because now she's in prison. And one of the latest articles that I found hilarious is that she was putting in a petition because the prison was violating her human rights as a prisoner. And I'm like, lady, you kind of gave that up when you decided to stab and go on a killing spree and take people's lives. So you're fine. You just
Yeah.
sit in jail. Um,
Well, you hear about that a lot, and a lot of it is depending on the justice system. I was actually shocked. I don't know if this is the case in the I guess it is in the U.S. where people can get married, but she actually
mhm.
petitioned to get married to her cellmate, her female cellmate, who initially they had a sort of a suicide pact thing that failed, and then the prison approved that they would get married. It didn't happen because the cellmate ended up getting released. But I'm just kind of thinking, you're a serial killer. You've got a whole life order, which in the UK means that you're in there for life, and there is no chance in hell that you will ever be paroled, and that's not given out lightly. They gave it to Rose West, Myra Hindley, Lucy Letby, who's the serial killing nurse that's been in the news more recently. So you kind of wonder, like, should you really be letting these people plan their nuptials when they've committed
No,
these kind of crimes?
I know, it's so bizarre to me. I mean, it's just she just reeks of entitlement. That's,
Yeah.
she's a spoiled, entitled kid who just she's not mature enough to obviously make any type of moralistic decisions. But
No.
it's
No.
yeah, it's weird to see that in prison, having these, oh yeah, you can get married or conjugal visits and things like that. It's like, no, you're in jail for a reason, deal with it.
Yeah,
So,
well, especially this
um,
kind of especially this kind of thing. This isn't like some guy who, maybe robbed the convenience store and, because he was down on his luck. This is pretty extreme stuff.
yeah, she just needs to be locked in a padded room around nobody. She just no human contact with her
Well,
whatsoever.
she's apparently still pretty active with, like, letter writing and cultivating male acquaintances. And, you hear about this before, that you still wonder, like, who in their right mind wants to correspond with this person in a sort of a romantic way or friendly way?
I
Why?
can't wrap my head around it. I just
Unless you're
can't.
writing a book about them, I don't get it.
Right? That would be the only reason why I would want to contact a serial killer because I sure as heck don't want to have small talk.
We got to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about a case that I'm very familiar with, but being a mother, I still cannot wrap my head around it. There will be that and more right here on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot.
Oh, my little darklings. Theater of the Mind, Tales from the Darkness is out and it's available right now. And I would love for you to pick up a copy of my brand new book. You can get it on Amazon wherever you live in this great, big, wonderful world of ours. Or if you'd like to get an autographed copy and you live here in the United States, go to paranormal60.com. We have the standard copy, non-autographed, just $20. Signed copy, only $30. And not only do we have this book, but we have my other book, The Other Side. And right now I'm running a special. If you pick up both books, you can get both books for $40, both signed. Both will be shipped in one package for one price. So go check out all the information at paranormal60.com. The Other Side, A Teen's Guide to Ghost Hunting and the Paranormal, which is a guide on ghost hunting and the paranormal. Or you can get Theater of the Mind, Tales from the Darkness, real life encounters with the supernatural. And not only are they some of my all-time favorite stories from you, but there's a few of my favorite stories that have happened to me in the book as well. So go check it out, paranormal60.com, to order your copies, or you can buy copies wherever you are in the world that are unsigned at amazon.com. And I'll ask you this. Many of you have supported me in buying this book already. If you could just take 30 seconds to rate and review this book on Goodreads or on amazon.com, I would greatly appreciate it, because the more we get of good ratings and reviews, the more they expose this book to a wider, bigger audience. So I would appreciate that as a personal favor to me, your pal, Dave Schrader. The Oregon Bigfoot Festival and Beyond is back and bigger than ever at Oaks Amusement Park, Saturday, June 29th. Meet Bigfoot hunters like Ronnie LeBlanc of Discovery Channel's Expedition Bigfoot and Paranormal Caught on Camera, and paranormal investigators like me, Dave Schrader of the Holzer Files and the Paranormal 60 podcast. Join us for a day of family fun celebrating Bigfoot, ghosts, UFOs, and everything beyond. You never know what you'll find. Don't miss the Oregon Bigfoot Festival and Beyond, Saturday, June 29th at Oaks Amusement Park. Get tickets today at OregonBigfootFest.com. OregonBigfootFest.com.
The Oregon Bigfoot Festival. Oregon Bigfoot Festival.
But now, one case, and the reason why I wanted to pick this case, because I'm very familiar with it, and we just kind of referred to it about his book, but the Susan Smith case, that one was probably the first case that I remember as a kid, like really looking back and saying, how, I looked at my mom, actually. I looked at my mom, I'm like, how could someone like you kill someone like me for no reason, really? I mean, like, I remember having that feeling, being like, wow, a parent killed her kids. It was so bizarre. October 25th, 1994. Susan strapped her two sons in the back of the car. It was 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex. And she, put them in the car, put the car in neutral, and she pushed the car into the lake. Now, what she decided to do was to go on TV, report that her car was carjacked by a black man, and she gave a description. And so the police were out looking for her car with a black man driving it, and they believed that he carjacked her and didn't realize the kids were in the car. So, of course, the police are some things aren't adding up from what she was saying, and it was because of a stoplight. They're
Yeah.
like, wait, at that time, that stoplight is always green. It's never red, because I guess it's like one way of the traffic's really heavy, so it's constantly green most of the time, unless there's cross traffic. But so then they started kind of questioning her more, and come to find out, she confessed. And the reason why she did it is because she was having an affair with a well-to-do man in their town, and he didn't want a family. He didn't want kids, he didn't want a family. So she decided to get rid of the problem, and that was by strapping her kids in the car. When you read that story and did any research and things like that on it, what was kind of your thoughts? Because that's something that's not common, um, unless, you have mental illness is usually involved. But
Yeah.
did you find anything in this case that stood out to you that you were kind of blown back by? Like, wow, I couldn't think a woman could do that. You know what I mean?
Well, the story was actually written by Kathy Pickens, who what makes this story so unique is that she attended the trial,
Oh,
and
okay.
she kind of puts a magnifying glass on the town. It's a small town in South Carolina. This is not something that is a common occurrence, and so she aside from dealing with the trial and all the details of the crime, she's dealing with how it's affecting the community and the in the news media. But in Susan's case, there's questions there. I mean, on the surface, yes, it looks like this was because she kind of wanted to get with this guy. I mean, apparently he sent her a Dear John or a Dear Jane letter that kind of cutting it off, and she wanted to have her little fairy tale happen. But there's evidence that indicate that she may have intended to do this as a suicide with her kids. I mean, she was driving around with like her wedding photos in the car and things like that. I mean, odd things like that. So I mean, it's sort of questionable if she was calculated setting out to kill these kids because they were in the way, or perhaps she, like I said, was intending to go into the lake with them and then chickened out or changed her mind or whatever the case is. So I don't think it's as black and white as all that. I mean, there's been so much written about the case and books written about the case, but I think it's one of those things we'll never quite know the answers to. But her background, though, I mean, it was a very damaged background. Her father committed suicide, and her stepfather began sexually molesting her from the age of 15. And he was an upstanding member of the Christian Coalition, which really, yeah. And so, she was very damaged. The people who spoke to her, the police, the investigators that were just trying to get some proper information out of her. She was just a highly damaged person, a very sort of a vulnerable person. So I don't know if there's really an answer to it.
Yeah, and I just read a news article. She is up for parole this November, 2024, and with the parole board, to let her go. She says that she's not the monster that people think she is. And obviously, to kill your own children, whether it's
Yeah.
for a man or for, just reasons that she may have wanted to just end the whole family, there's something mentally wrong in that, and there's something's going on with a person like that, because that's just not normal. And to have that maternal instinct to be pushed aside to protect our children, to be pushed aside so much that you're willing to kill the children that you're supposed to protect.
Yeah.
There's something seriously going on in her head, or what's going on in her life. And obviously the child abuse that she suffered from as a child obviously plays a huge factor in it. She, uh, obviously she just felt like, maybe she should just end it. I mean, she did say that she was wanting to take her own life with her children, but she changed her mind last minute. So it's kind of hard to really gauge exactly what was going on in her head, but obviously something wrong is
Yeah.
going on in her head, whether
Personally
regardless of the
speaking,
reason.
I don't get this. I mean, this whole murder suicide thing, it's like, okay, if you want to end it, go ahead. Here's the gun. But I mean, what gives you the right to take everyone with you? Did you ask
Right.
them if they want to go as well?
And that's why I really feel like when they have cases like these that are so abnormal, they're not the normal,
Yeah.
murder suicides or, serial killers. They should really look closer at these cases. That way they can get a better understanding of the mental health state of these people at the time. So that way we can, curate some type of mental health care plan for people before they get to that point. Um, because, mental illness is one of those things, it's very catered to the patient. It's not this blanketed, like a blood panel test. It's very, niche and catered to. So if Susan Smith would have had some type of mental care where she could easily access, would she have killed her own children?
Good
You
question.
know,
Yeah.
now one case I thought was really kind of different. It was Ruth Snyder. Now we're
Yes.
going in the way back time machine back to 1927. Can you tell me a little bit about Ruth Snyder and kind of what was her What was her little scheme that she had going on?
Well, this story really hooked me when the writer contacted me with his pitch, and he had mentioned that the case inspired ultimately what became the famous film noir genre, as well as the film Double Indemnity. And I am a
Mhm.
sucker for that. And that's one of my favorite films. So I was like, yeah, I'm definitely interested in this, go on and write and let's see what happens. So essentially, I think saying Double Indemnity gives it away. This is essentially what this story is about. But Ruth was, she married this gentleman. He was well to do. And the marriage didn't go well. As soon as they got married, he couldn't be bothered with sort of, whining and dining kind of thing. He just didn't really want to, be much of a husband. He was not a very nice man. He drank enough to the point that it was not good. When they had a child, it was a little girl. He was not happy about that, and so he was emotionally abusive to both, to Ruth and to the child. He harbored a love for someone who had died, and that speculated that this could be it, that nobody ever quite measured up. And so perhaps in a way he resented the woman he married because it wasn't this woman he truly loved that died. But anyways, so Ruth is, she's obviously, it's not a great marriage, and she meets this young gentleman, and they start an affair, and they get more and more involved, and she's telling him about the abuse that she suffers at Albert, her husband's hands, and they hatch a plan that perhaps we need to get rid of Albert. And it ultimately results in these insurance policies that Ruth has taken out. And like the film Double Indemnity, the insurance salesman fiddles a bit because one of the insurance policies is what double indemnity is. If something happens, regardless of however you die, you get double the amount. So this is like a great incentive to cash in if Albert snuffs it. So yeah, there's some fiddling going on with the insurance. So there were some false insurance policies that were put through. So so Ruth and her lover Judd hatch a plan about, staging this so-called home robbery, and poor old Albert's going to be a victim of the robbery gone wrong. But it does ultimately backfire, and it becomes that whole finger pointing thing, which we see often with partners in crime, especially when they're a couple, where, when they're both called to account, each blames the other and says, they did it, they were responsible, they hatched the plan.
Yeah, I think it like immediately, like when she got when the police started questioning her, she gave up her lover. She's just like, he did it. she
Yeah,
she
so much
wasn't
for the
wasting
big
no
love.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
that really
he did the same. He did the same. But what's really fun about this case, if you can use the word fun, is to kind of shine that light on it from the perspective of the era in which this took place, and
Mhm.
how the public's reaction was to both of them. Judd was looked upon as this upstanding guy that this human serpent, sucked into her web, and Ruth is vilified, and like she's this wicked sorceress that turned his head. So it was just really interesting about the press's reaction to both of these people who were really equally guilty, and they were both found equally guilty as well. But the sexism was just outrageous.
Right. Yeah, I know. And you want to know what, too? I mean, like, if she would have just said, hey, I just want to divorce Albert, do you think she would have walked away with anything?
Well,
No.
that's the thing.
You
She
know, the
probably
police,
wouldn't. Yeah.
yeah, you would be like, oh, no, if you want to divorce your husband, that's your problem. You deal with it. You don't get his money. I mean, they really, back then, women were not treated as equals or powerful or anything unless they did something evil. Then we were all these powerful sorceresses that could suck people. That's when we were powerful. But yeah, and when you're a woman in that position, women weren't as educated as men were back then either. So they had to depend on having a suitor, a partner. It wasn't really like this love relationship in a lot of
Yeah.
cases. It was just survival of the fittest. They had to marry so they could survive and carry on
Yeah.
with their life. So they had to find men with money, and a lot of times, even in that case, the husbands would not let the women have access to the money either.
Yeah.
So you kind of put these women in positions like this where the only way they can get out of this horrible situation is to kill their way out. And but one thing that was really interesting about Ruth was that uh she was killed, she was put to death by an electric chair, which was kind of not very common.
Yeah.
Usually with women, they'd hang them or things like that. But she was put to death by the electric chair. And there was this photographer who snuck a camera in under his pant leg and
Yeah.
actually got a photo of her in the electric chair, and the first, headline news on the paper was a picture of her in the electric chair, and it just said "dead" with an exclamation mark above, the headline there. So, it just
Yeah.
kinda shows you, kinda how they felt about women. Um, but yeah, it's like he's just as equally as guilty as she is, yet he's being paraded around as this, you know, upstanding person, and she's being vilified.
Yeah, there was I
There
mean, people were joyous when she was electrocuted, and, I think if I'm correct, there hadn't been a woman electrocuted for 30 years, and then Ruth was the next one, but,
Mhm.
if you've looked up the photo, 'cause, the photo, obviously, when you have a a camera strapped to your shin, it's not gonna be the greatest photo, and they had to retouch it, and it's just, because it was blurred, so it
Mhm.
ended up looking more like a painting than a photo. But if you look at it, there's just something so horrible. The image is just, you just shudder to see this image. I don't know how
I
even
know.
anyone could have taken joy from that image, whatever people thought of Ruth. I mean, it was just, ugh, it's an awful
Yeah,
photo.
well,
People should look it up because I mean, it's just something. Yeah, it's amazing.
yeah, and see, now, that's a clear-cut case of how the media can manipulate a
Mm.
suspect or a crime or an investigation on a case, because nobody listened to her side of it. And, she's telling people, "Look, this is a situation I was in, and he wanted to have a life with me, or lover, and we hatched this together. Apparently, she still says, I think she still said that she was innocent, right? Or did she end up? There was kind of like conflicting things I was reading about, but
Yeah,
if
yeah,
she,
there was a lot of conflicting stuff. I mean, even about how the actual killing took place and yeah, but I mean, basically even though Judd was found equally guilty and he ended up going to the chair right after she did, um
Mhm.
I think people still thought of her as the killer. He was
Oh,
sort of
for
an
sure.
incidental character almost in people's minds.
Well, yeah, because he was put to death the same day in the
Yeah.
electric
Few
chair,
minutes
but he
later, I
wasn't
believe,
in.
just as soon as they took her dead body out of the chair, they stuck him in there. So, I mean, that's just so
I
awful.
know, but he wasn't on the front page, it was her, and that's
Exactly.
probably why the public had such, this, thought of her being this evil, conniving woman that is, seducing men to do her dirty deeds, and, that could not have been the case at all, but that's how they painted her, so that's how they looked at her. So they put her on the front page with the dead across the top, an exclamation, basically saying like, "Ding dong, the witch is dead," you know?
Yes,
A
yes. That's
and
exactly
it's
what it was
sad.
like, yeah.
Yeah, it is sad. So, now we kind of come to the conclusion of this. What are kind of some insights that you thought interesting that you didn't know before going into focusing on serial killers and women? Is there something that you had no idea that it would even cross your mind until you actually saw it in black and white and you were kind of like, wow, I didn't even think of that?
I didn't really have any preconceived notions because, as I said, I've run into cases in past books. But I think with this particular book, I think the variety of crimes and the variety of motivations was fascinating to me, and I think that's also what's fascinating to readers as well. But I didn't specifically. I don't think I actually had any lights go off, like something I didn't realize. I mean, it's just amazing the amount of reasons that people kill and women kill, and then there's always this assumption that women are somehow different. But I don't know. I mean, everyone's a human being. I don't know why we should think a brain is different in a female head than in a man's head. For whatever drives you to kill.
We're just a lot cleaner when we do it.
Hi.
Not as
Very
sloppy.
tidy. Yes.
Yeah, we
Yes,
clean up
tidy
afterwards.
book.
Well, thank you so much, Mitzi, for joining me today. Now, is there a place where people can go and, see all the types of books that you have, contact you if they have maybe a suggestion of a story that they can send you? Maybe you can do a little more digging into. Is there a place that people can go and find you?
Well, obviously, I have a website, mitziseretto.com, and I'm on pretty much every social media platform there is: Twitter, X, now known as X, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, Spoutable, Mastodon. I don't know if I've left anything out.
There's too many, right? We need a
Well, yeah, I know every
spreadsheet of
time there's a new one,
everything.
I'm like, I better sign up for that one too.
I know. You do. You need a spreadsheet for all your social media and for all
I
your
know.
streaming channels
It's
and
a
stuff like
full-time
that. It's
job. I
just
don't know how I even get time for a book to be done,
right. How did you rate this book, Mitzi? Well, thank you so much. And I will have a link to your website on the program guide, along with a link for your book. And if you go, yes, I love the cover of it.
Thanks.
If you go and purchase her book, please rate and review. It helps the authors so much. That way, that book gets seen more to more people, and that way they can enjoy the book as much as you do. So, well, thank you so
Definitely.
much, Mitzi. I would love to have you back for another book that you do, maybe volume 10.
You never know.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot. And until our next case, my armchair detectives, stay safe, stay vigilant, and stay aware. I'll see you next week right here on Mysteries, Mayhem, and Merlot on the Paranormal 60 Network.